Coming up on this week's FAS TV, we continue with the Farm to Fork theme in the Scottish Borders at Longnewton Farm, and we get a behind-the-scenes visit at Forsyths of Peebles Butchers with cattle buyer Louise Forsyth. Gina and Jamie are sisters who took on the full-time running of Longnewton Farm near St Boswells following the passing of their late father. They both juggle farm work with their careers in the NHS and are passionate about rearing high-quality cattle for the butcher's market.
Our main kind of passion is finishing cattle, so we buy them at varies between kind of 12, 13 months old, sell them at the local auction mart. So currently we have 50 in-house at the moment with a plan to hopefully get them outside soon.
They're all heifers and they're all Charolais and limousines this year. That's what we generally buy because they're quite popular with the butchers. Yeah, most of them are pretty local. We go to Wooler, Mart, just in Northumberland, and St Boswells, which is just a few miles away. But yeah, we know most of the farms that we buy from, and we buy from the same ones regularly because we know what we're going to get.
So since we've taken on the business, the probably significant changes we've made is to feeding our cattle. So we've gone back to growing our own barley, which we did in the past, rather than buying in a ready mixed barley. The cattle is always been a passion which our dad had, and we're continuing with that. Some of the grassland.
Yeah, we're going to make haylage. Dad used to make silage, but we're going to do that, so that seems to work for the young cattle, and as the beginning of a finishing ration. That's new.
That's new.
And in the future we do have plans, but we've not quite decided where we're going to go, but there's probably going to be quite big changes coming quite soon, which is exciting. I buy the cattle, that's one of my jobs, and for all there are generally maybe a few more women at the buying sales than at the selling sales. I'm generally the only one bidding. It's a very kind of male world, but I'm never made to feel like, oh my goodness, you're like the only woman. It's always a really welcoming environment. Sometimes I look around and I just think, oh, do you know what I mean? Like, where are the girls? But no, I really enjoy it. I'm always quite surprised when I find out that my friends don't really know much about how food is produced. I can mainly tell them what I know about this farm and from what I'm gathering speaking to other farmers, but there's lots of misconceptions about how beef's raised. I think they just think that most of it's done in American style feedlots with not very much interaction with the animals, and that's the complete opposite of what we do and what most people we know, and also about how things are grown and how local things actually are and why the countryside looks like the way it does. But yeah.
Well, juggling a farm and NHS work, it works for us both. I've got more a flexible Tuesday to Friday at NHS and have kind of nights, mornings, weekends, and designated Monday to the farm because I go to sell the cattle on a Monday. And Jamie, you're clinical. I'll pass over to you.
I work random shifts. So I don't, it's going to, not nights, but just a lot of weekends and just, random days. But yeah, it's really stressful, my job. I really enjoy the farming because I find it's relaxing and I can kind of switch off, and I think it's good to be outside. I think we've probably got quite a lot of memories when we were quite young of just being told to stand like in a gateway and then have like hundreds of giant cattle thunder past us, and Dad just saying, don't let them past, Yes. So you kind of just get used to it.
When we're younger, friends coming over, they'd never, they always thought we lived in the middle of the nowhere. We're based in St Boswells, so we're actually in the centre of the Borders, and just trying to get people to understand, what we do. And we had space and taking them down to the farm, and then just through school we both were lucky, we both went to university, and I think I've always been drawn to come back home. I personally went to uni spent a couple of years in Australia and then came back, and one of the farm cottages came available, and Mum and Dad didn't think I'd maybe want to, because I was more in town in Jedburgh with my friends, but I just thought yes, I would take the opportunity to come back home, and then helped out more on the farm. And then Dad became unwell, and that's when I kind of was like, right, I need to learn the ropes, I need to learn how to drive the forklift, because that's a key implement on feeding, bedding, and then just from then just taken over. Sadly, our dad passed away a couple of years ago, and then we just were like, we've got this opportunity to manage and take on all the paperwork, the checks, all the extra responsibilities, all the behind the scene work.
Yeah, Gina's been really good at working with Moira at the college, and doing all the paperwork that we have to do, which, you know, is quite quite complicated.
So yeah, I've taken on that and kind of spreadsheets of monitoring cattle when they come in and out, and just checking weights and who buys them. So we've just got a year-on-year record to compare. So, so yeah.
I was slightly similar as well. I went to university and then lived in Istanbul for a bit, and then lived in Edinburgh for a bit, then decided to become a nurse. So I went back to university, and then my husband decided to become a teacher, and then we decided to move back to the Borders, and then gradually getting closer and closer to the farm where we've been living, and doing a little bit more, particularly when Dad got unwell. Like one day I just suddenly thought, we don't have enough cattle, I'm going to just have to go to the sale and buy them, and then it was done. But by then Gina was pretty good at the forklift and all that kind of stuff. But we never really had much succession planning talking, because it wasn't something that, I think it's a generational thing, didn't really want to. So we just kind of had to gather what we did and just crack on.
Just learning as we
go.
Still learning.
Oh yeah, that's what farmers always say. I always say, oh, I've just learned this year, and they're like, well, we are always still learning. Yeah, so it's just one of those jobs, isn't it? Oh, I think our relationship with the butchers and the people who buy our cattle have really benefited the business, because they're actually giving us feedback on what our carcasses have been like, and what they call the kill out, so how much of the carcass they can actually use once they've got it back from the abattoir. That's really important to them, because that's their bottom line, and they need to know that they're getting good value for money from our carcasses. And we've had various feedback over these. We've run some a little bit too fat. That was years ago, but now we seem our feedback's quite good. And Louise is particularly good. Louise Forsyth is particularly good at giving feedback, because she's much more specific with the feedback. Like the fact is that the kill out was this. She really knows what she wants, and she'll tell you. She's honest. We hope that we're consistent, because the same buyers consistently buy our cattle, and we know the kind of cattle that we're buying, and we know if they're buying them, they must be fine. So I think, would you agree with that? Yeah. So it is good, because if we're growing them for that, buying them and growing them for that market, we may as well try and fulfil what they want.
Forsyths of Peebles is a family-run butchers and bakery specialising in high-quality, locally sourced meat, handmade bread, rolls and pastries. The butcher and baker's shops work together to offer a personal service to their customers, both within the shop and through home deliveries. Louise Forsyth selects and buys the best prime fat cattle on a weekly basis from St Boswell's auction Mart to supply the shop and their home delivery customers. We caught up with Louise at the market to hear how she selects stock and supports local farmers.
I thought there were really good cattle in there today, and I'm looking for handy weights, so something under 600 kilos live weight, and there was quite a few fitting the spec today, which is good. The value of coming to the live auction like here for me is that we get total control over what's coming into the shop. So we know exactly, we do it with our pigs and our sheep as well, we buy live, and that to us, it's what we've always done, Our business is based on that, dealing with farmers that we've dealt with for many years. I looked back at a sheet last year from 2009, and it was Longnewton Farm. I'd bought a beast from them that day. So it makes, to us, that means an awful lot. That the meat is not just doesn't come into the shop, it's just an anonymous slab of meat that we're then selling on to customers. We've got the full story behind it, which means a lot. It also means that we're very flexible. So if Callum wants a beast with a bit more fat on it for more manufacturing or something, I can buy something with a bit more fat on it on the day. I can be very flexible. I think that's probably, it gives you flexibility and provenance. We've always had somebody buy our stock until I started buying, probably coming off of 15 years ago. We always had, say, Mike's Uncle Jim, so someone that was retired in the business came down and bought them, or we had a couple of other people that were retired that just enjoyed it, would come and buy for us, so they weren't dealers as such. And then I kind of opened my big mouth one day to Uncle Jim because there was a complaint about something that we'd had bought, and it was like, I said, I would have bought such and such instead. And the next thing is, it was like, well, you do it then, you get on with it. So I started buying, and I had to come down, I think the second week, and there's nothing more terrifying than standing at that ringside buying cattle when you are just starting out. It was like, really, but I had to buy about 11. It was coming up to Christmas, and I had to stand and buy 11, and one after the other. But you do it. So it's something, there again, I like to know, when I'm speaking to customers and I do my Butcher's Wife Facebook things, I've got the whole story behind it. It's all connected. It's what I really enjoy doing, and I've always said with the Butcher's Wife, and whether it's got value or not, is on the social media side of things, it's not to sell bits of meat. I don't go on there and, it's an offer for this and offer for that. That's nothing what it's about. It's about trying to get people enthusiastic, caring about their food. So when they buy a piece of steak, they know a bit of the story behind it. It's not just this bit of meat wrapped in cling film on a shelf that you just take home, follow cooking instructions. It's about trying to get people to cook economically, to value their food that they're cooking, just to appreciate what we all do, from farmers, livestock hauliers, everyone that works in the meat industry. We work really hard to get that produce on a plate, and I don't think there's enough, I don't think people probably understand it enough to value it. My market day, to give you a quick rundown on my market day, I decide what the weather's like. It's always several degrees colder here, so dress appropriately. As I said, I might sometimes bring my motorbike down, so if I can't be bothered in the traffic, I'll jump on the bike and come down. If not, I come in the other car with all the dogs. I'll quite often stop with other things to do. Sometimes I'll do a delivery en route, and then I get to the market, and it's a case of seeing what's there, looking at the board. And I think I said to you earlier, when I first started here 15 years ago, that board, there was literally hundreds of cattle on a Monday. It was filled up with cattle. We're now down to sort of 3/4 of one panel, which is great, but it just shows you the way things have changed, and people are much more direct selling now. So yeah, I get to the market, I'll probably grab a cup of tea off lovely Doreen, because that's really essential before I start. And then you head down to the sheds, and I'll phone Callum in the morning, and I'll know how many lambs we need. So I don't get the lambs, Robert Wilson will get the lambs for me. And then it's a case of 2-3 cattle. I buy at the ring, but I also buy direct from Walter Dandy at Leary Law Farm. But I go up to the farm, I was up there last Tuesday, I go up there and I choose the cattle ourselves, and I pick out what I need there. Networking at market for our business, I think it's a case of, it's not networking as such, it's trying to talk. I've learned so much about the industry just by talking to farmers, and I think the common thing is we all have so much in common. We're all facing the same issues, problems with staffing, overheads, etc., trying to provide what the customer wants. So I think just sitting in that canteen talking to people, you learn so much and you share experiences. And I think it's never just, there used to be a big thing about it was the farmers against the butchers, so to speak. And I don't think that's relevant nowadays at all. I think we're all trying to do the same job, but all trying to sell Scottish, British meat to consumers. If I had one tip for a farmer bringing a good beast, get it finished properly. Try and find out what the best weight to get that beast finished to is, so you know your target, you know where you're aiming. And most importantly, get that beast, if you're going to make the effort to bring it to market, get it well presented. And make an effort to sell it, and have it looking its best. If you're going to put it through a ring, have it looking good.
Butchery is a craft and a well-respected trade. At Forsyths of Peebles, the art of butchery runs in the family, where respect, care and attention goes into every finished product.
Well, we're in Peebles and I'm Louise Forsyth and I'm part of the family business, Forsyths of Peebles, established in 1938. I haven't been here quite that long myself, but we've been on the high street. And as you can see, it's just a traditional butcher shop. I married into it. I could have been, I don't know, living in the south of France somewhere, but I met a butcher. I actually came in here to buy a leg of lamb. Somebody had said to me, oh, there's a really good butcher's in Peebles, you must go in. And I came in, and it cut a long story short, I'm hooked up with Mike, and I got my leg of lamb, and I got a butcher as well. So, and then I actually studied history and things at uni in Aberdeen, but I wasn't working at the time, and I just got so interested in it. I walked in here and I saw it was Eddie at the time butchering down a hindquarter, and I just was fascinated. And then I got into that. I did some manufacturing things, did ready meals and stuff, and one thing and another, worked on the shop floor, and then ended up doing the beef buying, and I have just loved it. I've learnt so much, I've met so many great people, and I take a lot of pride in what we all do. It's a huge team in there. They all work really well together, and they do it in a traditional but a commercial way, and fantastic products. We're Peebles High Street, we've got Peebles people working here, everyone lives here, their kids go to the local school. We've got these amazing skills that we're retaining and enhancing, here on the High Street. We've got about 30 staff at the moment, full-time and part-time. Another really good thing about a shop like this is we take on school kids after school and give them opportunities to come and work after school on Saturdays. And some of the kids we've had over the years, they've gone on to do amazing things, but they've had a really good grounding here, working in here, and you're learning. It's the future of butchery and the skills in the trade is a huge problem for everybody involved at every area and sector of the industry. I think probably farming is the same. Certainly livestock haulage, I think they're having issues recruiting. Abattoirs, processing plants, and the high street butcher. We've had an advert out for the last 2 weeks looking for either an apprentice or a trained butcher to come and work, and there is nothing. There's nobody out there that wants to come and work. And I think hopefully coming through the shop with me, you'll see the skills and the level of work that goes on. And it is an interesting job. And anyone young out there, if you go and train as a butcher, you'll go and get a job anywhere in the world. Whether you work short time in a place like ours, you're getting skills, you're improving everything, improving your skill base. You'll get a job anywhere as a butcher nowadays. Right, I've been talking about the shop. Let's go in and have a look round and we'll start seeing the process. So we've got Eric and Darren here, and your Lincoln sausages just at the moment. It's pork link sausages. This is our sort of main manufacturing area, so everything goes on here. Great, so we're about to go into the chiller. This is where the beef, when it comes in from the abattoir, it comes in here, and it's where really I've bought the cattle live at the market, and it's where you see the end product and you see what sort of job you've done. And our beef is all one of the main things for us is consistency. We want consistency of product, and that's evident when you see the beef hanging up. So we'll have a look at it through here. I've got my sheet here, and we run a very strict rotation here with what comes in and how it's used and what period of time it hangs for. So it's all colour coded, and it works on a monthly basis. So we've got beef here from Dandy's at Longnewton Farm, which I go up and buy direct from on the farm. We've got beef here from, this is Dandy's as well. And you see, when I'm looking for a piece of beef, I'm looking for confirmation, and these are all Limousin Cross heifers mainly. And you get that lovely fat cover down here. So when you're hanging your beef for 3 to 4 weeks, you need to have that fat cover there. We work on this part more quickly. Top side here is worked more quickly. Our sirloins will hang an extra week, and that gives them, with that lovely fat cover, you're going to get a really good steak off those. And the next one along is brokerig here, this side of beef here, which we've had it in for a couple of weeks. That's very local to us. It's just up the road, and lovely bit of beef again. Then we've got Smale and Mains at the end. Got two beasts in from Smale and Mains there. And this is how, so this end here is the oldest here, so we work from there. This is the newest one in, so we work in that rotation. We've also got lambs in, sausages and things when they're manufactured are in this chiller waiting to go up to the front. So the beef, this is where you see, and this is the end product, so all the work that the farms put into this. the farmers put into this beast, getting it hanging up in this good condition is what it's all about, really. And then we'll take this and work through, and it will end up in the front shop in the cabinet. So, and it's all about utilising everything as well, so nothing on this beast will be wasted. We're going to use everything on here, and that's throughout the process. With everything that comes in, we maximise it. Okay, so this is the main workshop, main butchery area with Callum, and we've got Lewis and Tim and Martin all working today. And depending what day of the week it is, what customers are looking for, it can vary from, Callum's doing a lamb just now. They'll be working on different things throughout the week. Pigs come in on a Tuesday as well as beef, so it's full on this morning with working.
Butchery is a skilled trade, and it is important to encourage young people into butchery to keep these traditions alive for future generations.
Top tip for someone looking to get into butchery, I would say find a good place to train and learn, and somewhere like Forsyths of Peebles would be an ideal place to go and learn, because the scale of business we are, although we're a small family business, you're getting a whole range of skills. So you're going to work in the front shop, you're going to work in the butchery area, or work in manufacturing. You maybe do a bit of office work, so you will learn everything that's involved in running a business or being involved in an industry like this, and then you're going to learn skills, and you'll go on and you can apply those to other areas.
Hello and welcome to August edition of FAS TV's Veterinary Update. I'm Fiona Crowden, one of the vets that works for SRUC Veterinary Services. So July has seen pretty showery weather ongoing, and that's going to extend into August till at least the middle of the month, with temperatures remaining about average for the time of year. This means that all of the parasites, the gutworms and the lungworms that Helen talked about in last month's update, are still going to remain a risk for your stock at this point in time. Homunculus is a blood-sucking worm, and therefore you don't get diarrhoea. What you do get is pale mucous membranes, so the membranes of the eye can become quite pale, and you can see lethargy in sheep, weight loss, and some bottle jaw, some fluid collecting around the jaw of some sheep. This means that quite commonly in Scotland it gets misdiagnosed as fluke. Diagnosis of homunculus is reasonably straightforward. High fecal worm egg counts, especially in the thousands or tens of thousands, are really very suggestive, especially if that's combined with clinical signs. And we can then do a special stain on the worm eggs in the faeces samples and identify them definitively as homunculus eggs. Treatment is using just your usual anthelmintics. However, because homunculus can be quite prone to developing resistance, if you are suspicious of, or if you have diagnosed homunculus on your farm, it's definitely worth getting in touch with your vet to plan a strategy for the long-term management of homunculus on your farm. Another parasite we should think about this time of year is sheep scab. We see a peak in diagnosis of sheep scab from about October onwards, and this is associated with the movement of sheep during sales over the next few months. So it's well worth, if you're thinking about selling breeding animals or selling stock onto other farmers, you can check the scab status of your flock. The problem with sheep scab is that the mite, which is transmitted between sheep by direct contact, can take months, weeks, even months to cause clinical signs. These clinical signs include restlessness, itching, staining of the fleece over the shoulder, and a yellow crust developing over the skin. So it is possible that you could have sheep scab in your flock but not manage to detect it by seeing the clinical signs yet. So if you want to check whether there's scab without the clinical signs, there's a blood test, and that blood test can go positive within 2 weeks of becoming infected. So the test requires 12 sheep from each management group to be tested, and that'll give you an idea whether there's scab within that group of animals. Preparing for a Sustainable Farming initiative in Scotland will provide funding for this testing. So it's worth talking to your vet as to whether you should consider this as part of your 2 animal health and welfare options. If you've purchased sheep, you can think about also doing the blood sample following purchase and before you introduce those sheep to the rest of your flock to make sure that they are not carrying subclinical infections of scab mites. So moving to cattle, we see a peak in diagnoses of blackleg in cattle in the later months of the summer. Blackleg is a bacterial disease caused by Clostridium shovii. This bacterium form spores, and these spores can be present on pastures and can survive there for years. These spores are ingested when the cattle are grazing and make it from the gut into their bloodstream. From there, they settle into the muscles where they remain. If there's something that happens that decreases the amount of oxygen in that muscle, be that body muscle or heart muscle, so that can be like a trauma or a bruise forming, the spores then germinate and the bacteria can multiply within that area of muscle. They release a toxin which causes necrosis, so dying, killing off of the muscle, and forms these black dry lesions that we associate with blackleg. These toxins also enter the bloodstream and can cause the sudden death of animals. We see blackleg most commonly in cattle under 24 months old from about 2 months old, most commonly in the southwest of Scotland, although we do see cases over the whole of Scotland. More commonly in beef animals, and usually the stronger, more well-grown calves within a group. So rather typically it's always you're seen in the best animal in the group. If you do have sudden deaths and you think it could be blackleg, post-mortem examination is the best way of diagnosing it. We can detect the dry lesions in the muscles, as I say, be that forelimb, hind limb, sometimes the lumbar muscles of the back, occasionally the tongue, and quite commonly around the heart in young animals. We can then do a special stain, a fluorescent antibody test on these lesions to confirm the presence of the bacteria within the muscle. Prevention is by vaccination, so that is usually 2 vaccines 6 weeks apart, 2 to 3 weeks prior to the risk period. The main challenge for vaccination in cattle is handling of the cattle to give the vaccines prior to the period of risk. It's quite a cheap vaccine, so commonly used in farms that know they have a problem. If you do get sudden deaths that you think could be blackleg, get your carcass to either a post-mortem centre in Aberdeen, St Boswells, Glasgow University or Dumfries, or get an on-farm post-mortem done by your vet. This will allow you to get the diagnosis and plan to vaccinate next year.